So I sit down. You can keep it here. Yeah. Thank you. So I think, Mr. Venkatesh, your problem of water can be solved by Swiggy. We were discussing offline that people who are stuck in traffic jams, how can we help them with food? So I think water problem can be solved by Swiggy, not for taking bath, but at least quenching your thirst. But this mic thing, I think, still needs to be resolved using AI. We need to do something. The interesting conversations today, uh, the first one about how to make movies. Uh, in fact, the narrator said that we might lose interest, but I think the techie in me, I felt very interested looking at that. Looking at a blank canvas and making a fantastic movie. And then the steps for success in data analytics and the last discussion from a lot of guys. Fantastic. Now we are here, taking it to a little higher level, discussing about how AI can help us, or how AI is defining the strategy and directions of various companies. We've seen a lot of new innovations of companies coming up which are driven by AI, but a lot of companies are changing the way they work based on AI. There is huge amount of competition, there's huge amount of innovation, profitability, customer success, operational functionality, efficiency. All these factors are really playing into every direction these days, and are concentrated around the concept of AI and generative AI, and from traffic signals to so many things. So we are here with the two panelists who are both the companies they work for are doing a phenomenal amount of work in this direction. So I think let me start with you, Tradeb. How do you see AI or generative AI contributing to innovation within your organization, and how is it influencing strategic decision making?
Thank you for having me over here. So I think when we talk about data and AI, now we are at an inflection point almost, right? Where we have been, when you talk about AI, right, we say that, we learn from the past, right? We have the data and learn from it, right? Now suddenly we are in an era where technology is telling us, like, no, you can't only learn from past, right? You can generate your future, right? So you can shape your strategy forward, right? So I think that's what is happening, and that's what is going to happen in this decade. At Games 24/7, definitely we invest a lot in terms of how AI is shaping the experience of the users that are coming to our platforms, right? So there are multiple aspects to it. Our key ethos, right, that we follow is what we call a science of gaming, where we want to be extremely objective to understand what our users need, right? Be extremely user-centric and why-centric. Ask the question, why user needs that or is behaving in a certain way, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's where AI comes in, right? Looks into the data, using generative AI to drive the future in terms of like what kind of content might work for the user, right? This could be gameplay content, which includes gamification, hyper-personalization of their journey, their user experience, and more importantly, when we run various different kind of marketing campaigns, for example, what makes more sense for the user, what the user needs. I think it's been extremely user-driven, and that's how AI comes in and tells us like how we can understand our users the best that we can, and then help their journey or help their life or help their engagement, right? Through a safe gaming platform, in terms of their experience. So that's how we are utilizing it, and that's how I think AI is going to drive the future for most of the organizations.
Excellent points. Some of those things probably are, we read a lot about them: data generation, data creation, synthetic data generation for, feeding it to the models, customer experience, and hyper personalization. I think I'll just take a follow on to you. On the same thing, Swiggy is a lot into user services. How do you take those elements of customer experience, personalization into how Swiggy functions? And I'm very sure you'll not be using synthetic data generation for users. Otherwise, I'll only get pizzas and not Punjabi parathas.
I completely resonate with what Udip said. A very interesting point of data generation, but not synthetic, right? How you mentioned, because uh, fortunately or unfortunately for Swiggy, if there is one recommendation which doesn't work, we see it on Twitter the next day, right? So we don't need to see from our models. So I'll give a real example. Hoping that a lot of you would have used our application. We have a tipping option for the drivers because we assume we have three consumers. We have restaurants who are our consumers. We have customers who are our consumers, and drivers are also a very integral part of us. They are also our consumers or our stakeholders, as we call it, right? So now when we want to give the tipping option to the customer of what to tip to the driver, we had no prior data available, right? So we've never had that option. How do we know what works? What is that point? So we actually ran a real experiment to crowdsource the data from the population. Now, when you crowdsource the population, data from the population, it has to be at all time slots. It has to be at various different price points. And then it has to capture all kinds of customer behavior to actually create an AI ML model which is balanced and which works for both customer as well as driver. Because if you routinely show options which are not making sense to the customer, they may get irritated, frustrated. And if drivers are not making money from the tips, then they are also not very happy. So that's where our data, crowdsourcing, experimentation, consumer experience, that's like a bridge between both consumers and drivers. Otherwise, there are various ways where our strategic decisions are being made using AI, whether it is generative or otherwise. For example, the search option for the consumers. For a particular population in experimentation phase, we did launch neurosearch, as in consumers can search, I would like to have a Punjabi paratha from a low-cost restaurant delivering in 20 minutes. And then it will give you options. So it's a plain English search. Or it could be even like, I want gourmet or a small restaurant, something like that, right? And it will give you options. It can even take you to a recipe if you would like to. A lot of our restaurant reviews are now summarized through a lot of data which is available online using Gen AI. So we are using it continuously to improve the consumer experience, are shaping our strategies across initiatives, but also being very heavily used for restaurants as well as drivers.
Fantastic. These are, using sentiment analysis and the experiment on tipping options. These are fantastic things. On the same lines, I think what you're doing is using a lot of human element actually, which is reflecting through the data. Uh, any major directions that the company has diversified into or changed into by leveraging this kind of data or creating some kind of simulations around like this?
Our flagship program, Swiggy One, which is our loyalty program, that was launched. So we exactly know how many consumers we will acquire, how many will renew, at what price point. And this is all measured fortnight to fortnight. And if we deviate by point so much, then we always find an explanation of why that happened. So we now have quite a definite handle on, if I may say so, on the how consumers repeat, retain, what works for them. Because the first time we launched, it didn't work. So we understood that what is not working, what is working, and then recreate strategies based on it. So that itself was born out of a lot of quant work, if I may say so.
Something on similar lines for you?
Absolutely. I think so in gaming platform, what happens is like, users are spending their entire time in the platform, right? It's interactive. So they generate a lot of data if you think about it, right? And then you can utilize that information to understand a lot more about um, their behavior, their needs, etc. As I was saying about user centricity, one of the key things that we definitely look into is like whether a user is going, let's say, overboard when they are trying to play the games, right? And how you can bring them down, right? And this is where we utilize a lot of generative power to understand, right? Okay, this should be the perfect path for the user, and whether there is a deviation, why there is a deviation with proper explanation. And then based on that, how can we guide them, right, through their journey and make their experience much better, right, than what they were ideally doing, right, so otherwise doing. So I think definitely that is one angle that we focus a lot on. So it's more about the user. And secondly, obviously, as Ishu was saying, right, completely in agreement with her that generally what happens is because of generative AI era, right, innovation has gotten democratized, right? Now you can try out various different things and you can have various different messaging created, maybe in terms of creatives, maybe in terms of the messages, the reach outs that you are doing with the user, and suddenly you are not limited by how much you can yourself do, right? You have a machine, right, which can help you generate a lot of possibilities that you can try out. So experimentation has, exponentially increased, right? And that has definitely helped in, guiding our, platform to the user's need.
I think I'll take it forward from there uh, to something that I do in my organization. I lead that effort in my organization. With all this thing that we do, how do you correlate or how do you bring in the responsible AI and ethical AI elements into what you are doing?
Yeah, I think it really depends on how you are using the AI. I already mentioned about one aspect of responsible AI that we are doing, which comes from the intent. But from a technology point of view also, it is extremely important to understand how this Gen AI works, right? And how it doesn't work, how it should be used, how it should not be used, right? Now, we think about it in three different ways, right? One is like off the shelf LLMs that are available and you can use the outcome just for it. And we have seen the other day I was searching for Gen AI in Chat GPT, by the way, right? And what I got as a response was generation AI, not generative AI, right? So generation AI is more from a humanity point of view, right? So I think so that's the kind of risk we run into. So it is extremely needed to be controlled by a human, right? There has to be human in the loop, right? We have heard of various fine tunings and prompt engineerings today, right? Which basically tries to, customize the AI, right, for the need of the organization on the internal data. But they are also, we need to understand the nitty-gritties a little bit because the, distribution of data on which the core models were trained on is different, maybe different from the actual outcome that you are looking for. So there might be mismatch. So I think that needs to be, there has to be an ecosystem, AI literacy within the organization, and proper interdisciplinary team created to make sure that human is in the loop whenever necessary, and also make sure that you are measuring the performance of the AI system properly. There is a measurability to it, right? It could be coming from the business side, or you need to come up with your own metrics to measure like how it is actually performing.
So, just to add to, if you can add something to what he said, and then maybe, uh, you know, in, talk something about how is this going to happen in the future with human interaction, responsible AI, and a lot of, you know, the the NLP piece, etc., that we are building. How do you see that is going on in the future?
So, just to talk about responsible and ethical AI, I think it's important to establish certain metrics at the start of the initiative where you say, okay, here are the metrics we're going to measure us against, and think through them before it starts and not as an afterthought. I think that's important. For example, I can talk about high, high resolution images. Now everybody is using it. We are using it for our menus. Marketing is using it. Creatives are being out. So one of the things we would like to, one is when you create those images, they have to represent the sample and not get biased by your profitability or other kinds of goals. The other is we even decided at some point in time that we may have to show the customer that this is an AI generated image, because when the food arrives, it can't look very different from, you know, what we are putting out, because sometimes restaurants are not able to do it. And a picture always helps in terms of what you're saying. The other thing is when we are working on some of our algorithms, we always make sure that we have balanced outcomes for small restaurants versus large restaurants. Um, it is not biased towards a certain kind of customer, though that bias may exist in the data. But that doesn't mean that that bias should continue to hold in future experiments and future results as well. So we do establish these metrics and adhere to them. So,
So
yeah.
I think thanks a lot, Ishu. I think time's up, and we need to come to some kind of a conclusion. But very informative. Thank you so much. Uh, Innovation is AI is driving that kind of innovation and is changing the way we do business. Uh, you know, Only one part on a lighter note as we end. How do you ensure your kids don't use your systems, despite they being the best judges of this? Maybe we can talk over coffee on this. So thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure talking to you.